3 meals a day, every day. But what if those meals were barely more than survival? If you can handle the truth, subscribe now, and stay with us as we go inside what prisoners really eat in America's toughest prisons. It doesn't matter if you're a killer, a petty thief, or someone waiting for trial, that tray comes just the same. But what's on it, what's actually served, tells a story few outside those walls ever see. It's a story about budgets, control, and what society decides a human being deserves when they're locked away. This isn't fast food. It's survival food, stripped of flavor, stripped of warmth, stripped of dignity. And for over 1 million people behind bars, it's the only thing keeping them alive. The first kitchen shift starts before sunrise. Inmates wearing hairnets and faded aprons line up to clock in. Some volunteered, others were assigned. The pay? Anywhere from 10 cents to 40 cents an hour. Breakfast is bulk operation. Trays roll down a metal belt, one after another. A scoop of grits, a biscuit, maybe a single egg. On better days, a carton of milk. At Louisiana State Penitentiary, Angola, one of America's largest maximum security prisons, cooks say it feels more like a factory than a kitchen. A former kitchen worker said, "You learn to cook for calories, not for taste." Every meal is measured down to the ounce. Each inmate receives about 2,600 calories a day, the state minimum required by law. But portions shrink depending on budget, and substitutions are common: powdered potatoes instead of real ones, soy protein instead of beef. Everything runs on cost, not care. Most prisons spend between $2.30 and $4 a day per inmate, that's for breakfast, lunch, and dinner combined. On paper, it's efficient. In practice, it's tasteless. Those who cook inside say the hardest part isn't the heat or the hours. It's watching hundreds of trays roll out knowing you wouldn't eat any of it yourself. But for inmates, there's no menu, no choice. Only whatever comes down the line. In theory, food inside prisons is about survival. But in reality, it's about control. Inmates at Rikers Island in New York say they've been served spoiled milk. At Attica in upstate New York, moldy bread and cold rice are common complaints. In Florida, a former inmate said, "You don't complain about food. You just eat, or you go hungry. Every bite comes with a reminder, you have no power here." Even asking for a different tray can be seen as disrespect. The line between nutrition and punishment gets blurry fast. In 2014, an inspection in Michigan found kitchens infested with maggots. Inmates who spoke up were written up for disruption. The following week, they were still served from the same kitchen. Incarceration is meant to take freedom, but often, it takes dignity first. One former inmate put it simply: "They feed you enough to keep you breathing. Nothing more. Control doesn't always scream, sometimes it just starves." If the chow hall is where control happens, the commissary is where freedom fights back. Commissary day is like payday in another world. It's when inmates can buy instant noodles, tuna, peanut butter, chips, and coffee, tiny luxuries in a colorless routine. For those with family support or small prison jobs, the commissary becomes everything. A kitchen, a therapist, even a business. Ramen noodles, especially, have become the new currency. One pack can buy you stamps, soap, or even a favor. At San Quentin, inmates joke that ramen runs the prison more than the warden does. A cup of noodles can smooth tension faster than any guard ever could. From this trade grew a food culture all its own, the spread. The spread is made with heart, hunger, and creativity. Ramen, chips, tuna, hot sauce, mashed together, cooked in a trash bag with boiling water. It's part recipe, part rebellion. Former inmates describe it as a reminder of choice, something the system tries to erase. "We couldn't change the food," one said, "but we could change how we ate it." That small act, transforming bland ingredients into something flavorful, becomes a way to take back control. Inside these walls, food isn't just nutrition. It's survival, comfort, and sometimes, it's family. But for those in solitary confinement, even that little bit of control disappears. Here, meals are silent and colorless. No table, no chatter, no commissary. Just a tray pushed through a narrow slot, 3 times a day. Sometimes, the tray doesn't even hold food as we know it. It holds the Nutriloaf, also called disciplinary loaf. The Nutriloaf is made from mashed beans, vegetables, flour, and oats, baked into a dense block. It meets nutritional standards but removes every trace of joy or comfort. It's not hot. It's not cold. It's just punishment. Courts have debated its legality for decades. Some states banned it, calling it cruel. Others quietly kept serving it under different names. A former corrections officer said in an interview, "It's not about feeding them. It's about breaking them." Prisoners forced onto Nutriloaf diets describe nausea, fatigue, and despair. For some, it's worse than isolation itself. Behind bars, food becomes a message. In solitary, that message is clear: you are not in control. We are. Long before the trays and the commissary bags, the food inside prison starts here, in the dirt. In states like Texas, Arkansas, and Louisiana, many prisons still operate their own farms. At Angola prison, once a slave plantation, inmates grow vegetables, raise cattle, and harvest crops under the eyes of armed guards on horseback. Prison officials call it rehabilitative labor. But critics say it's another form of control, a legacy echoing the past. Those who refuse to work can face disciplinary punishment, sometimes losing privileges or being sent to isolation. Former inmate Calvin Williams once described it like this: "We grew the food. We picked the greens. But by the time it got to our trays, it wasn't ours anymore." Most of the crops grown never end up in the inmate kitchen. They're sold to state institutions or used to feed prison livestock. The irony isn't lost on those who work the fields. You can farm food every day, and still go to bed hungry. It's a system built on the idea that labor replaces punishment with purpose. But behind the fences, even work that feeds others doesn't always feed the worker. Nutrition inside prisons isn't about health, it's about cost control. Every calorie is calculated, every ingredient budgeted. The U.S. Bureau of Prisons sets guidelines for balanced meals: protein, vegetables, grains. But what those look like in reality depends on each state's budget and contractor. In some facilities, frozen food trucks replace fresh produce entirely. Vegetables come in powdered form. Fruit arrives in cans. Inmates say even water sometimes tastes like metal from the aging pipes. Inmates often complain of constant fatigue and digestive problems. One doctor from the California Correctional Healthcare System admitted, "We see malnutrition not from starvation, but from what's missing: vitamins, minerals, real food." The human body can survive on 2,000 calories. But the human spirit? It needs more than just numbers. At Cook County Jail in Chicago, a 2022 review found calorie counts barely meeting state minimums. Inmates were supplementing meals by eating instant noodles 3 times a day, not out of choice, but necessity. Even more alarming are cases where expired or contaminated food reached kitchens. A 2015 Michigan audit revealed over 100 complaints of spoiled meat. The supplier was fined, but the system rolled on, unchanged. When food becomes formula, people become numbers. And numbers don't feel hunger. People do. Even behind bars, faith finds its way to the table. Across America, prisons are required by law to accommodate religious diets. Halal, kosher, and vegetarian meals are part of the Religious Land Use and Institutionalized Persons Act. But in practice, that promise isn't always honored. Muslim inmates in Ohio once sued after being served pork-laced meals during Ramadan. Jewish inmates in Florida fought for access to certified kosher trays after years of being denied. Many prison kitchens are too understaffed or underfunded to separate ingredients properly. Cross-contamination is common. Even when meals meet faith requirements, they often come cold, smaller, or late. Still, faith meals carry meaning beyond nutrition. A kosher tray or a Ramadan fast becomes a statement, a refusal to let identity be stripped away. One chaplain at San Quentin said, "It's not just food. It's belonging. It's proof that the system hasn't erased them." In a place built to break routine, rituals keep people human. A simple meal becomes a small act of faith and defiance. For a few days each year, prison kitchens change rhythm. Holidays bring a taste of something rare, variety, and a little bit of hope. On Thanksgiving, inmates might get turkey, cornbread stuffing, and pie. On Christmas, there's sometimes a slice of ham, a small dessert, or even real milk. At San Quentin, cooks add spice or hot sauce when they can, calling it holiday flavor. For most, it's the only meal of the year that feels like something to remember. But the joy is always measured, small portions, tight supervision, no lingering. Once the trays are cleared, the silence returns. A former inmate said, "The food was better, but the best part was the noise, laughter, voices, the sound of life." Even a simple cookie can mean everything in a place where days blur together. Holidays remind inmates of what they've lost, but also what they still have left, memory. And sometimes, that's enough to carry them through the next 364 days. In every prison, there's the meal you're given, and the meal you trade for. Inside those walls, food becomes more than nourishment. It becomes money, power, even respect. Instant noodles, coffee packets, candy bars, each one carries value far beyond its price tag. At San Quentin, a single honey bun can buy a haircut. In Attica, 3 packs of ramen might get your laundry done. And in some southern prisons, a bag of chips can settle a debt or spark a fight. They call it the commissary economy, a silent market fueled by hunger and trust. A former inmate once said, "If you're hungry enough, you'll trade anything for a real taste." For prisoners with no money on their accounts, that market can feel like a world they're locked out of. Those men and women depend solely on what the state provides, the standard tray, the lukewarm beans, the watered-down juice. And so, another economy forms underground. Some inmates who work in the kitchens hide small portions of food under sleeves or in socks, risking punishment for a piece of bread or fruit. Others turn creativity into survival, building makeshift stoves out of metal and wires, cooking meals from whatever scraps they can find. They call their creations chi-chi, noodles mixed with chips, tuna, and cheese melted together in a plastic bag. Or spread, a communal meal made from shared commissary items, passed around in laughter and secrecy. These aren't just recipes. They're survival rituals. Because where the system offers rations, people invent comfort. And in the emptiness of routine, that small taste of something different, something you made yourself, can mean everything. One inmate said it best. "We might be locked up, but for a few minutes, eating together made us feel free." In the free world, food connects people. It brings families to the table, it marks time, it comforts. But in prison, food divides. Psychologists who study correctional environments call food the first and last form of control. Every meal inside a prison is scheduled down to the minute. No choices. No changes. No freedom. Breakfast might come at dawn. Dinner might arrive before sunset. It doesn't matter if you're hungry, you eat when you're told. And over time, that rhythm reshapes the mind. When all choice is taken away, food stops being pleasure. It becomes command. You don't eat because you want to. You eat because it's the rule. Years later, when inmates leave prison, that conditioning doesn't fade easily. Some can't sleep without saving food on the side of their bed. Others lose their appetite entirely, unable to trust that the next meal will come. At Pelican Bay State Prison, where solitary confinement can last decades, some inmates eat in complete silence, alone, facing a wall, with no human voice to break the stillness. One man, released after 18 years in isolation, said quietly, "I forgot what dinner with another person felt like." Hunger in prison isn't just physical. It's emotional, psychological, a quiet kind of ache that seeps into every part of the day. Because inside, every meal reminds you of something you've lost: family dinners, laughter, warmth. And the more controlled food becomes, the more you crave what it once meant. Hunger, in its deepest sense, becomes not just a need for food, but for connection. Across America, reformers and former inmates are asking a simple question: should punishment ever include hunger? Over the past decade, this question has moved from prison walls to courtrooms and state legislatures. In 2019, the ACLU sued a private food contractor in Michigan for serving spoiled meat and rotten vegetables to inmates. In 2021, California passed a law requiring every prison to disclose nutritional data for inmate meals, an effort to bring transparency to kitchens that had long been hidden from public view. And in 2023, New York advocates pushed for a Healthy Prison Food Act, citing alarming rates of diabetes and hypertension among aging inmates. These reforms may seem small, but inside, they matter. Some prisons are trying something different. In Colorado and Oregon, inmates now work in greenhouse gardens, growing tomatoes, herbs, and greens. They learn about soil, nutrition, and responsibility, feeding not just themselves, but their communities. At one prison in California, the harvest from inmate gardens is donated to local food banks, a gesture that connects people inside with those outside in ways that punishment never could. And at San Quentin, a man who once led a gang now teaches a culinary program to other inmates. He tells them, "We can't fix the past. But we can change what we feed the future." Reform moves slowly, and many of these programs struggle for funding or consistency. But the movement continues to grow, driven by one idea: that rehabilitation can't exist without humanity. Because food isn't just a cost to manage. It's a tool to rebuild lives. And in the quiet corners of prison kitchens, small changes in what's served can lead to bigger changes in what's possible. Every meal in prison tells a story, about power, about control, and about the fragile line between survival and dignity. But one meal stands above them all. The last meal. For those on death row, it's tradition, one final request before the end. Some choose foods from childhood: fried chicken, mashed potatoes, apple pie, a soda. Others ask for nothing at all. In Texas, where more executions occur than anywhere else in the country, the tradition ended in 2011. An inmate once ordered a massive feast: steak, fajitas, ice cream, then refused to touch it. Lawmakers called it an insult. From that day on, last meals were abolished. Now, everyone, even those facing execution, receives the same food as the rest. Equality, in its coldest form. It's a haunting truth about the system itself. Even in death, everything remains portioned, timed, and controlled. Yet, within every tray and every bite, something human still lingers. The man who shares his ramen with a cellmate. The woman who prays before her cold meal. The laughter that rises from a shared spread made from scraps. Behind bars, food becomes memory, the last thing that connects people to who they were before the walls closed in. It carries hope, nostalgia, defiance, even love. Because in the darkest places, where freedom is gone and days blur together, even a meal can mean something more. It can mean survival. It can mean remembrance. It can mean the smallest taste of freedom. And that's what makes it powerful. In the darkest places, even a meal can mean hope. Documentary by Crime Source. Subscribe for more.